Well, winter 25-26 already off to a quick start here with some of us in the central part of the U.S. already picking up quite a bit of snow as we got through the Thanksgiving holiday. Well, more cold air is on the move. And as we inch closer to the Christmas holiday, we're looking at the potential for maybe even more significant cold to make its way into the country from the north by the end of the month of December. We're going to talk about the longer range prospects of cold and maybe wintry weather, and we'll talk about our next storm impacting the Ohio Valley, parts of the Mid-South, and moving to the Northeast over the next 24 hours. Thank you for joining me here. This is my third anniversary running Josh's Severe Weather. I know I haven't been on much over the last month, a lot going on here, but I do welcome you back. For those of you here, as we now enter meteorological winter over the next 3 months, and we are likely to look at several more winter storms in the coming days and weeks. And the goal here today is to talk about what we're seeing in the medium and longer range across the U.S. and North America and what those potential impacts may be. Now, as we head towards Christmas, of course, there's not a whole lot of skill yet in looking at the exact details, and we're not going to forecast what exactly will happen 20 plus days away, but I am going to show you some of the patterns that I'll be watching in this video. So we're going to take a look at it right now. Let me share my screen with you here and walk you through a look here at how we're doing as far as snow so far this season. And you can see things have definitely ramped up this winter, this young winter across the Corn Belt. A lot more snow, especially in Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, parts of Minnesota, than what we saw this time last year. If you look at last year, a lot of this area was bare of any snow. We just saw a little bit of snow, and then go back to this year, and already some places have already picked up over a foot. And the one of the fifth snowiest winters in places like St. Louis and Chicago and Des Moines and Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So off to a busy start already this season. And even in places like Eastern North Carolina, going back to Veterans Day, we even saw a little bit of snow blanket the ground. Although since then things have been pretty quiet as far as winter weather goes. So, yes, not everybody is going to see a white Christmas or at least have some snow on the ground. I'm looking at those of you here in the Southeast and along the Gulf Coast. And even in the mid-Atlantic states, not a guarantee yet that we are going to have a white Christmas across this area. Still doing battle with some of the warmer ocean water, but we are still early on in the winter season. Typically, we don't get big storms here before Christmas. It is possible, but right now the signal not very strong. But those of you across the interior of the Northeast, the Appalachians, into the Corn Belt, the upper Midwest, this area likely going to get lined up with more storms in the coming weeks. And of course, the Intermountain West will see quite a bit of snow, especially the farther north you get. So in this video, we're going to talk about what we're looking at as we look ahead at the coming days. Now, as we got through last month, much of the country was still on the warm side, especially in the West. It was colder than average, though, across the interior of the Northeast, but we had such a warm first half of the month of November, with the exception of that 3-day period around Veterans Day, where it did get very cold for a couple days, where we definitely have seen a trend to much colder. And if you look at the last 10 days of the month of November, it has stayed warm across the deep South, but much colder air making its way down from the prairies of Canada into the upper Midwest and into the Ohio Valley, and not just colder temperatures, but certainly snow as well with that. And that cold is continuing to feed down. You can see this big trough in place this evening, centered across the central parts of the country, bringing some wintry weather conditions earlier today to Oklahoma, Arkansas, parts of southern Missouri, the Ohio River Valley. We're seeing another round of snow across the I-70 corridor, the lower Great Lakes. And that snow is going to continue tonight, spreading up into eastern Ohio, western New York, western Pennsylvania, northern parts of West Virginia. And as this storm comes over the Appalachian chain, with the cold air that's still holding on east of the mountains, we are going to see some icy conditions stretching from the higher elevations of North Carolina on up into central Pennsylvania. So something to keep in mind if you're watching this video and you have plans to travel overnight into early on Tuesday, we are going to see a glaze of ice in some of these areas, in particular across the foothills areas of North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia as well. Now, for the big cities on Tuesday, and I say big cities, I mean Baltimore, D.C., Philly, New York, even Boston, Hartford, Providence, this is not really a winter storm for you. This is primarily going to be rain as the low pressure track continues to come right up the coast, not far from the Jersey Shore and up to Cape Cod. Now, on the back end, there will be enough cold air where this could switch back to snow and get the Boston area, especially north and west of the city, with snow Tuesday night, but primarily a rainstorm for these coastal communities. And that has certainly been the talking point over the last several winters. Yes, there will be snow this winter, but we are not yet to that point as we are early on in the season. This is primarily going to be a big snowfall for the higher elevations of the interior Northeast, looking into parts of New Hampshire, Maine, western and central Mass, southern Vermont, upstate parts of New York as well, and eventually into Atlantic Canada as well. Behind this, we've got another shot of cold air coming down midweek. We'll have snow in Denver and the Front Range, higher amounts across the ski country, the high country of Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, even parts of Arizona. Another big high comes down. This sends down the coldest air of the season by the time we get to Wednesday night and Thursday to the upper Midwest. We'll talk about the wind chills with that in this video. And as that cold air comes down, it does struggle to pick up some moisture from the Gulf. By the time we get to Wednesday night and Thursday, there could be an area that breaks out with some light snow or even some ice near the Red River that we need to keep an eye on Thursday. As the system does move eastward, though, the potential for it to be a winter storm does start to fade as it comes through the Tennessee Valley into the Carolinas. Now, the European model, as of earlier this afternoon, is still holding on to a slim chance there could be enough moisture moving up into this cold air for some light snow or sleet near the North Carolina-Virginia border, but that is an outlier. The GFS model has backed off on that potential. So right now, it wouldn't be anything major. It would come during the day. I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But it is a trend we'll have to keep an eye on because there is a supply of cold air coming into this. Behind this system, though, I think things are going to quiet down. This low will come up the coast. There'll be probably a little bit of snow over parts of the higher terrain of New England, again, when we get early on to this weekend. And then another round of cold comes in behind it, and we just see clipper after clipper. So more snow in places like Peoria, Dubuque, Chicagoland, South Bend, Fort Wayne, Cincinnati, Columbus. You know, I know a lot of you in Indiana and Ohio have been talking about how we just have had some pretty dismal winters. I think this might be your makeup winter. At least I talked about that last month in my winter forecast. So we're going to be watching these clippers come down. Here's another one towards the middle of next week. And again, as we get farther into time, the skill of this model continues to drop. So we wouldn't put a lot of stock into a forecast that's 10 days away. But you can see that the pattern does continue to supply us with cold air. Now, as we get later into next week and beyond, the jet does start to retreat and we see more of an active track into the West Coast. In fact, there could be an atmospheric river that hits the Pac Northwest this weekend, and that opens up the stage for more storms to move into the Northwest next week and eventually into California later next week. So we will start to see more Pacific air getting involved and likely bringing more snow to those ski areas out west, but mainly some milder air as well out ahead of it, as we get more out of the Pacific, less out of the North Pole. Now, there's some debate on how this works out, but as we get towards the week of the 15th, we could see more back and forth. Those of you that have plans to travel in that middle week of December could be in for some significant weather as we see a big back and forth battle on the European model. The GFS model has also been back and forth just between each run. And as we take a look here, in advance of next week, we see kind of a similar look to the European model. Now, the latest GFS does try to bring a low pressure system up the East Coast at the end of next week. The European did not show this. The Canadian doesn't show it. So for now, this is probably not going to work out, but we'll see. It's a possibility. But you can see the GFS then brings some very cold air down from Canada a lot earlier than the European and brings a big Arctic front all the way down around the 15th or 16th. So either way you look at it, we're going to be watching these shots of cold come down, and the southern and the southeastern United States will be on the warm side. There is going to be the southeast ridge. So we are going to see rain in Florida, and we're going to see mild temperatures on the central Gulf Coast. I just got back from Louisiana. We were running the air more than the heat, even up until about Thanksgiving, and then it did finally cool down to more comfortable levels. Well, it is going to stay warm down here. We're going to have a classic tug and war. So eventually, as we get closer to Christmas, we may see the cold air win out, but it is going to be a battle to see how far that gets down. Last year, as you remember, towards the middle and second part of January, the cold won out. We had record snowfall down to the Gulf Coast. Right now, I don't see something like that happening before Christmas, but I would never say never at this point. There's just no skill in trying to figure that out. But you can see a lot of the country will continue to have shots of cold air coming down. So I want to fast forward into this video. We're going to take a look at the snow that's going to fall here over the next few days. Generally 2 to 4 inches. If you blend the models together, lake effect areas, we'll see quite a bit more in Michigan and off of Lake Huron. Then a light snowfall later tomorrow night up across the upper Midwest into Wisconsin. But generally speaking, over the next couple of weeks, we're looking at 3 to 6 inches across the higher populated areas of the Midwest, more in the lake effect belts, more in Western New York, Pennsylvania. Some areas could see as much as 3 feet of snow. I wouldn't even be shocked to see more off of Lake Superior. Nothing unusual, I would say, at this time. But places like St. Louis, Louisville, Kentucky, maybe even getting closer to Baltimore and DC could be in for some more accumulating snow over the next 10 days. Looking at the Northeast, our big one here is going to be coming tomorrow, and most of that will be upstate New York into central New England, even down East Maine. There will be the potential to see around a foot or so of snow. But this stays primarily north and west of I-95. I don't think New York City or Philly is going to really get any snow out of this. Chances are pretty slim. Hartford may see a little wet snow mixed in, but I think it's primarily rain. Providence will be rain. Boston, primarily rain, maybe a switch over towards the end of this storm to a little bit of wet snow. When you get up, though, north of places like Portsmouth, Dartmouth, and then up into Maine, we're going to see some snow for sure. It seems to be the magical line here. As soon as we get up into the Maine seacoast and just up the north New Hampshire coast, it does go over to snow, and we could see a lot of snow out of this storm. After that, more snow coming here towards the weekend and beyond. And over the next 10 days or so, we will see 1 to 2 feet of snow in a lot of areas. The mountainous areas will get a lot more. Ski areas should see a pretty good amount of snow here. Out west, we are going to see snow in Denver towards Wednesday. I'll show you that in a little bit. The Rockies will get quite a bit of snow. California, Oregon, not a whole lot of snow over the next 10 days. It does start to get a little bit more conducive for snow after we get past next weekend, after the 13th or so. But the next 10 days, it will be a fairly mild pattern in the Southwest and on the West Coast. All of our major snow is primarily aimed at the Cascades and the Tetons and across Western Canada and towards Alaska as well. Could see some substantial amounts of snow. Speaking of Colorado, though, Denver will see some snow out of this on Wednesday. We're probably going to see about 2 to 4 inches of snow. Now, if you're in Denver itself, you won't see a whole lot, but we get west and south, places like Castle Pines, Castle Rock, those areas, and then up to the north and west. Obviously, we're going to see more elevational snow there. So we're going to see probably some more snow as we get towards the weekend and into the following week. Not a big one for Denver at this point. The mountainous areas, though, will see some more substantial snow. Temperatures are going to be taking a tumble. These are wind chills from the GFS model. You'll see they're cold, but nothing brutal yet. Now, Wednesday morning, it gets a lot colder across the Dakotas. And then Wednesday night, Thursday morning, we see some minus 30s showing up. So we start to get into that true Arctic air by Thursday morning, and it stays pretty cold beyond that. This first wave of cold goes away. It gets colder again towards the weekend, and we just continue to recycle these shots of cold. There'll be a thaw here and there. You know, I hate to say a thaw when the wind chill's 15 in Minneapolis, but those of you, when you know, it does get a little bit warmer, but there will be more cold coming, and you can see more of that coming towards the middle or so of December. We get more extreme cold coming. But at this point, I don't see anything brutally cold to the point where we're talking about record-breaking chill, at least not for the next 2 weeks. After that, though, things could certainly start to change as we get deeper into the season. Ice, that is something we need to be watching here pretty closely across portions of North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. Coming to an end across Arkansas with this current storm. I did mention in parts of Texas and Oklahoma around the Red River towards the end of this week, we may see a very small amount of that. But I think primarily the area to be concerned with over the next 24 hours is going to be across Western North Carolina, Western Virginia, eastern parts of West Virginia, maybe even Western Maryland, and sneaking up into the Poconos. Generally speaking, a quarter inch or less. But there will be icy roadways and bridges early in the day on Tuesday. Keep that in mind if you're traveling Interstate 81, for example, during the morning hours of Tuesday. As we look out into the future here, I'll explain this to you. The warmer colors up at 30 millibars, way up aloft, indicate colder air coming down underneath that. This is up in the stratosphere. When it warms, that allows colder air to get discharged and come down from the polar vortex. This is not a sudden stratospheric warming. It has warmed, but I guess you could say it was somewhat sudden, but it remains warm, which indicates that cold continues to shuffle down. We see it release a little bit around the 10th or 11th. It cools down, which means that cold goes back somewhat and retreats. Then we see another shot of that coming down here closer to Christmas time, around the 25th or maybe shortly after. So no sudden cooling, if you want to call it that, at least in the coming days, but there will be some break coming and likely some more cold coming. Now, the skill of this model right now isn't super high, so this can change, but it is something that I'm watching fairly closely. What we do need to watch maybe a little bit more carefully is what's called the Madden-Julian oscillation. It is a tropical pulse of convection that crosses the equator. It takes about 2 to 3 months to do so. When it comes around to the western side of this graph, it's usually in the colder phases for North America in December. And currently, we're in phase 6 going into those colder phases of 7, 8, and 1. And you can see as we get to around Christmas time, we'll be in an 8 or a 1. Now, it's not a very strong MJO, but this could certainly change. The AI forecast shows it'll be a weekly cold signal at this time right around Christmas. Certainly, it's not going into a warm phase, so we're going to be watching that. And from the World Climate Service, you can see that typically speaking, when the MJO is in those phases, we see below average temperature across much of the northern portion of the country. So that sets the stage for more wintry weather, for colder temperatures, for higher heat bills in many of these higher populated areas like Chicago, like Minneapolis, St. Paul, like Detroit, like Philadelphia, New York, and much of the north. Not so much, though, for the southern United States at this time. The Arctic oscillation, this is the 45-day forecast. Right now, it remains on the slightly negative side, meaning the colder air oscillates down into the Western Hemisphere, into North America. When it's highly positive, it will be more on the Asian side. This indicates it's going to be a little closer to our side than the other side of the world, at least for the time being. And it remains near to slightly negative, but nothing extreme at this point if you look at the climate forecast system. And then the PNA, that's the Pacific North American oscillation. That is negative right now. It does go positive, but then starts to come back to negative around Christmas time. Now, when the PNA is positive, that is typically the best setup for cold and snow in the southeastern United States. It does have a shot of doing that here late next week into the weekend, but towards Christmas, it looks like it may average out negative again, meaning the prospects for a big southeast winter storm around or after Christmas aren't particularly high. That doesn't mean it can't change. You can see there are certainly ensemble members that are on the positive side, but the mean and more of our members than not are on the negative side. So right now, I would not be rolling the dice on a winter storm in the southeast, but it is something we'll still have to watch for. Remember, though, we're in a La Nina, and typically that would mean a milder winter for the southeastern United States. And right now, at least, we're heading in that general direction. But you can see as we get after the beginning of the new year, it does aim back to a more positive direction. In fact, substantially more positive around the 10th or so of January. So just like last January, we may have some storms to watch at that time. Here's a look at the temperature anomaly forecast. Here's the cold that's locked in for now. And you can see the next wave of cold getting ready to come on down here next week in Western Canada. This is the purple Barney that we watch a lot this time of the year, and it is coming down before Christmas into the central United States and then discharged all the way into the southeastern U.S. This is Christmas, and much of the country east of the Rockies is going to be below normal, according to this model ensemble member of the GFS. Now, this is just one model member. One of our ensemble members. There are others that are warmer, but you can see kind of looking at the possibility here of this cold coming down. That kind of lines up with what we've been talking about here. And that lasts right into New Year's. Taking a look here at the timing things out, you see the cold moving across the northern U.S. later this week. Then we maybe get a little bit of a reprieve later the weekend into early next week. Then another shot of cold gets ready to come down. We're kind of back and forth, but it's tough to time this out, with precision, but this is Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, and you can see there's at least a potential somewhere around Christmas, give or take a few days, that there will be an outbreak of cold again and maybe wintry weather, including snow or some sort of storm with it across the eastern United States. Now, is this going to work out the way it says 3 weeks, 4 weeks from now to this exact T? Probably not. But it does give us at least a signal for much colder temperatures. Now we'll look at it again tomorrow and the day after. It'll probably look differently. But either way, you can see that there will be the potential for there to be a big discharge of cold. Where and when it hits is still to be determined at this point. And then, of course, that's going to come and go, and there's more cold to come as we get into January. There's typically going to be a thaw at some point here. We typically see that a lot. And then there's more cold that comes and goes after that. Here's a look at snow potential over the coming week. We've talked about it across the northern United States. And, there's no major, East Coast storm setup at this point. We're looking at mainly clippers and storms that come out of the southwest and go northeast. But, we look at it and we still see quite a bit of snow across the northwestern U.S., quite a bit across New England and the Great Lakes. There'll be a lot of lake effect snow here. But right now, our ensemble members aren't giving us a lot of hope for snow across the southern United States, and not a whole lot either in the mid-Atlantic or mid portions of the South. And for the next 46 days, granted, this is just a model ensemble mean. This is taking 50 possibilities, averaging them all together. We see a whole lot of snow across Atlantic Canada, the Great Lakes, and the interior of the Northwest, and improving chances across the mountains of California, big chances across southern Alaska. But we don't necessarily have a lot of confidence across the southern Corn Belt, across the deep South for sure. Even the Carolinas, not really a slam dunk at this point. And what this is showing is that none of our models is indicating anything south of Interstate 20 really at this point. So that's what we're looking at right now. Looking at the Northeast, pretty good prospects for snow over the next 45 days. Again, this will probably change, but again, this is an average. We're seeing several feet of snow potentially, and more in the lake effect areas, as you might imagine. Not a lot around New York City, more so for Boston, limited amounts once you get south of Philly and Baltimore. And, it shows an inch or so around Raleigh and Charlotte. But again, that's averaging 50 potential outcomes. And, it's going to take a few extremes in there that are going to weigh down the ones that don't show anything happening. So I'm not saying it won't happen, but the odds are very low of something happening. In the Midwest, though, we definitely have a better shot at some more snow. And you can see the potential for a couple feet around Chicago and Detroit, and certainly Wisconsin, Twin Cities, more snow potential around Omaha and Sioux Falls and up to North Dakota. Not as much around Kansas City. You can see the track more so across where we've seen the last couple of storms, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, and then tracking through the Great Lakes. But, I would not rule it out at this point either. And out west, of course, not a lot in Denver, certainly not too much across parts of eastern New Mexico, northwest Texas, but there will be the possibility that we could see a storm in here at some point. This is just not typically the time of year we get the big ones in this part of the country. As far as rain goes, it will be turning wetter across western parts of Canada, the Northwest, not so much California. It will be quite dry here compared to average. The Gulf Coast, though, up into the Carolinas, is expected to get some beneficial rain. And where it's really going to be wet, it will be across portions of the tropics, the Western Caribbean, which I know a lot of you folks like to go vacation into the Caribbean and take cruises this time of the year, which I would certainly do so unless I was a snowman, because, what do you call a snowman who vacations in the tropics this time of the year? Well, a puddle. And you can see we got a puddle here, 15 inches or more above average in the next 45 days. But in the shorter term, it is going to be quite wet across the Gulf region, and that is very beneficial, especially Alabama, Georgia, northern Florida. That rain is going to be a blessing for you. It won't be pretty, but we need every drop we can get right now after how dry the fall was. As we look ahead, though, it doesn't exactly stay wet. In fact, southern Florida, which has had some rain recently, will have more beneficial rain coming next week, it looks like, while the rest of the South actually turns dry. When we get closer to Christmas, it will turn wetter across parts of the South. And then as we get farther into time, it is tougher to find a signal for strong amounts of rain or dryness. But you can see between Christmas and New Year's, we do have some wetter prospects here across the Tennessee Valley, which you would expect in a weaker La Nina season. And then finally, looking at the next storm here, I've talked about the rain. We're getting it in Louisiana. We're going to get even more places like Dothan, Enterprise, Ozark, Alabama into southern Georgia. We're looking at a couple inches of rain, maybe even more parts of eastern North Carolina, down eastern North Carolina, like New Bern. Those areas could see a couple inches of rain from this storm tonight into tomorrow. And not so much in South Florida. I know you got a little bit earlier today, but as we get beyond, we see another storm at the end of the week, which will bring beneficial rain into Louisiana, far southeast Texas, and eventually the rest of the Gulf region as well as we get to Friday and early on Saturday. So a couple of doses of needed rainfall coming in the next 10 days or so. And then things are going to get a little bit drier after that. So we'll wrap things up here with this video, but I appreciate everybody's time. As always, I do want to close this out with a word from the good book that I read every day, because I am a Christian and this is what drives me to do what I do every day. But it is the season. And let's not forget that. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Isaiah 9:6. And my prayer for you who may be watching today, no matter what you believe, is that you do have some peace in your life. And I hope that you do get that peace from Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace. He brings joy to me. He brings joy to many others. This is a joyous time of year. I know a lot of us are going through some difficult times. I personally have suffered a great loss of my family. Many of you maybe as well. But there is peace in knowing that these family members are up in heaven with Jesus. There's peace in knowing that. And I pray that you get through the season like I do, in seeing that peace and seeing the joy that is given to us, despite all of the struggles that we are going through, because one day that struggle will be over when we have that calling to, when God comes to us and says, well done, good and faithful servant. That is the calling that I long to hear. And I hope you do as well. I really appreciate you all. Thanks for being patient with me. Do me a favor. If you haven't yet hit the subscribe button, please do so. I know I'm not going to be able to get on here every day this week. In fact, I have to get back on the road and travel some this week. But I will be back on with more updates as we get closer to Christmas. And as we get into more winter storms, I would like to keep you all abreast of those situations. So I appreciate your time here on this Monday night, and we'll talk again soon. God bless.